You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me, as always, Happy New Year. It's Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm well. Happy New Year to you as well, all the listeners. It's we're into the 2024 side of things, and
yes,
and there's still a relevance about this current season on the ice as much as there is off. Obviously, like off the ice was going to be the big thing with this team, right?
Yes, the 2023, the 23-24 schedule has turned the page, and we're going to dive into kind of the recent little stretch here. We're in the 24 stretch. Before we dive into it, follow us on the social medias, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're at YWT Podcast pretty much everywhere we can be. So, okay. Yes, you were getting right into it, and we got to make sure to get that in there first. But getting right into it. There is still a relevancy about this team. We have a little bit of that New Year's optimism going on right now. Things were looking a little sour a couple days ago. Things were starting to get a little sketchy, but as we sit here recording on Sunday evening, it looks like the team has kind of righted the ship a little bit. You know, a good game against Calgary on Saturday kind of capped things off here as far as, you know, the block of games between shows here. And they looked better. And we saw a little bit of improvement against Columbus on Thursday night. We'll talk about that game a little bit. They kind of pulled themselves out of the rut a little bit with a win on Saturday. Kevin, as we sit here now, Flyers playoff team?
It's still too close to call, obviously.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to be for a while. Like, just pull up the standings and you don't need to look at league standings or wild card or anything. Like, don't even look beyond. Just look at the division straight up. Just look at the division, and from third place to seventh place is a 4-point gap. That's it. And you've got two tied at 46, two tied at 44, another at 42 that is somewhat lurking in the background. And like, it's not like it's that far ahead to where second place is either. I mean, it's 3 more points from where the Flyers and the Islanders sit, and then Carolina's up in second place.
Sure.
But like, you know, Carolina's found their footing a lot lately. You know, they kind of
they're starting to look good.
More like the team that we thought they were going to be.
I don't necessarily expect the gap between second and third place to get smaller anytime soon. Carolina's starting to kind of get in the groove.
If nothing else, the gap between first and second might get smaller.
Fair enough.
That's it. And the only downside for Carolina in that spot is that Carolina's played 2 more games than the Rangers have. So there's some breathing room for the Rangers to like make it up on their own time. True. But if the Rangers hit a slide, it's the same thing. Like, you're far from being a certainty at number 1.
And when Carolina gets cooking like they are, and Andrei Svechnikov is scoring like he is,
boy, he had a week and a half or so where he just was like the central figure of everything. He was all over the place, goals galore. I mean, he came back and I think he rose through, like, in terms of points, like total points. He like jumped up like tons of spots just because he was having multi-point games every night.
Yep, I gotta stop benching him in fantasy because he is just too hot right now, and he started really slow, so his numbers aren't great on the season.
Well, he was hurt. That's the problem.
Right,
injured,
exactly.
And it's like,
and he comes back and he's starting to look 100%.
His ranking in fantasy, for what it's worth, by the way, because when you're injured, you drop into like the territory of like 500 something or whatever overall in the league. His ranking has like skyrocketed in just a matter of 2 weeks to something like he's nearly in the top 100 of all players and missed like half of the season to this point.
Yeah, he's got 26 points in 25 games, only 9 goals. And I say only, but like 9 goals in 25 games is pretty good. Most players would take that.
You know what, though? That's not what it is for me, because it's the recency thing of it. Like, he came back, he couldn't score that much.
Right.
What does he have? This is what, the last 5 or 6 games. He's got
that's what I was going to say.
6 or 7. It's like, so I don't care. You got 9. He's got just within the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's got like 7 of them.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, is the fact that he's only got 9 on the season, but most of them have come recently, and he's starting to really warm up. And
he's become the guy who you anytime goal scorer in games, because it's happening so regularly.
It's pretty crazy. But anyway, back to the Flyers.
Yes.
The Flyers season has also been crazy. Like, if I told you before the season started that the Flyers would be not just above Bettman 500, but above true 500, as of right now, the Flyers are 20, 13, and 6. They are above true 500, and we are this deep into the season. We're talking about, potential playoffs. Even this stretch, right? If you're watching on our YouTube channel, the graphic on the screen, 2-3-3 in the last 8 games. You still, even through a tough skid, through the holidays, some ups and downs, you still managed to salvage 7 out of 16 points.
Right, and that doesn't sound great when you put it that way, obviously.
But when the Metro's as close as it is, if you get 4 points during this stretch, you're 7th in the division.
Right. Well, I honestly think it even has to do with some of the way that some of these games were. Like the fact that you can even take like let's be real about what that graphic really says about the last 8 games. It's 2 wins in 8 games.
Right.
That part's not good.
That is the worst part. Yes.
But when you can take the 6 losses and split them down the middle in terms of I got something for it,
salvaged points.
You salvaged something, and these were games where like every time, just about maybe it's the last one of those 3 is the one that you kind of wish was in the win column, the Columbus one, because the first 2 were great points. Like, let's kind of start at the beginning of that stretch, which is actually before it even starts with the 8 games, because we did the last show. They were on an 8-game point streak. They got it to 9 because of a win in New Jersey that they looked like they probably had no right getting. And the Hughes brothers, who won the game in overtime in Philly when they played, turned the puck over, and Owen Tippett scores the game winner.
And all Sam Harrison looked great in that game.
Sam Harrison was great in that game. And they looked like that was another moment. And I go back to even further, and this is kind of a really, it's not, we're not jumping to looking ahead just yet. Obviously, we just started. Right. But the last time they played the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is a game that went to overtime, think about watching the rush at the end of the game, and it's Sean Couturier scoring in overtime in that game. And the way that it feels to watch a Flyers game this year, the way that kind of the vibes have been, and they score in overtime, win a game, and there's a reason to to me, that was the first game, the Pittsburgh game that they won in overtime. That was like the first time that that was
your buy-in game?
A little bit, because and only because throughout the course of most of it, let's put it this way. I'd be remiss if I didn't go as far back as early November, when you're already going through one a little bit. The winning wasn't there all the time. It was a rough patch for sure. Like, they had won 3 of the first 4 games, and then you started scattering in a bunch of losses, regulation losses at that, and especially the close variety. Like, we kept coming on here and saying, well, they're not getting blown out. It's not bad, but they're still losses. And how many times did I feel like I said, it's the perfect rebuilding loss. They lost by a goal and it was late, so they were competitive, but they didn't win the game. So it's a rebuilding loss. And they had their first real, kind of one of their first real blowout games. They lost to the Kings 5-0.
Yeah.
And we looked and we said, okay, the next game though is San Jose. San Jose hasn't won a game all year. That's got to be the time when you snap out of it. And then they lost that one too. And before we could do another show, and by the way, when we did another show, they had won 2 games. So we even said, oh, that softens the blow a little bit. They came back and won back-to-back games. So now the San Jose game doesn't feel as bad as it did. But I remember the day after.
Oh, it felt pretty tough.
Well, the day after that San Jose game,
immediately it was pretty tough.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, here was kind of the theme of that day. A lot of casuals who were kind of in a spot where, let's remember what early November is, right?
Sure.
Early November is you're now over the post baseball, whatever happened. You're kind of over the depression of this baseball season ending.
Yep.
Football
the Eagles
is
are
back
in full
the middle,
swing.
and you still don't even know what with basketball, you still don't even know what that team is yet. It's still early for them too. You're still finding out. So when you get an isolated Flyers game, that's kind of an opportunity to say, I'll check it out. Let's see, maybe. And that's not even a great game to mention to isolate, because it's super late at night. It's in San Jose. It's not a great game to look at.
It's against a bad team.
Right.
Yeah.
But they lose it, and the team hadn't won all year. And that is enough
and they had just lost their previous 2 games, allowing 10 goals in each of them.
Oh, they had the Sharks. Correct.
It was directly off those really, really awful Sharks games.
Sure. And so that led to kind of this impression of, well, they're the same old team. Nothing's better. Forget about them. I'm done already.
Back to mediocrity. I'm out. Yep.
And by the way, that was maybe 12 games in, 13 games into the season.
And to be entirely honest, with the expectations for this roster going into the season, I get it. With the circumstances being what they are, this is a team that's openly talking about, look into the future and multiple year plans. And we're talking about, this year not necessarily being the most productive year. And then you come in and watch them lose to San Jose. I'd probably tune out too if I wasn't as invested as I am.
And it was a little different because I think nobody would have cared about that game in that sense if they didn't start off with 3 wins in 4 games or a few wins in the beginning of the year to kind of make you think, well, maybe they're better than we are they better than we thought they were? Maybe we didn't give enough credit here. Maybe it's whatever. And that was like the game that kind of turned people off to it. And what did they do after that? They rattled off 5 straight wins. And then we came on a show and went, wait, are they good?
Right.
And like, that's the kind of thing. And then what happened right after we did that show? They went through a lull. It was right up to Thanksgiving. They lose a game. Okay. They lose a game. The 5-game winning streak's over. And then the Ranger game happened. And the Rangers, it was, hey, the building was kind of more packed with Ranger fans than, maybe more than, again, we had hoped because we thought maybe there was a little bit of a shift. Nah, it still was a lot of Ranger fans. And the Rangers,
it was much more 50-50 than it could have been.
From crowd perspective, yes. And then the game was lopsided even by the, even though the score was 3-1, you were down 2-0 before you could blink and it was over.
Yep. Yeah.
And then, like a couple of different games, it felt like they were going through that lull. And then you got through to December. And by that point, once you got into December, they had pitched a comeback against the Devils that got a game to overtime. They still lost it in overtime, but they had pitched this comeback that gave you just a little vibe there because it didn't have to be that way. It was 3-1 late. They could have just folded. They didn't. Then they beat Pittsburgh in a shootout. Then they win that game in overtime. And because they kept hanging in the same kind of crazy spot in the standings, and now it's December, and now they win a game in overtime like that against Pittsburgh. It wasn't even that I was like, it was that's the buy-in for me. It was kind of the moment where I let myself look at the situation and go, because you know how I look at some of the early games in the season when they're doing okay?
Yeah.
Don't get overly excited because it doesn't mean anything. It's one game and I get like, it's just one game. It doesn't matter. The more it happens with consistency, the more you can build towards let yourself get excited about the win because the win is exciting, right?
Yes.
That was the first one for me where I go, okay, that felt like, and the shame of it is I wasn't in the building that night because I was under the weather that like right around that time. I would have loved to have seen how the building, like the way it felt in the building. Cause I've seen some of the games like afterwards, like I'm going to tell you right now, the next 2 home games they had after that were the last 2 right up against our last show, the shootout win against Washington and a 1-0 shutout against Detroit. That building was going.
Yep. Oh yeah. The building is filling up. And to be honest, looking across the sports media market a little bit, it doesn't necessarily look like the Eagles are going to have the longest playoff run. So we may get a little bit of a shift in attention fairly
sooner rather than later. That's
the
thing. Like last year, you knew with the football season, you were bracing yourself for, well, let's put it this way. The Eagles were the best team in the NFC last year. So you already knew you had a bye week there. So you had 2 weeks immediately. All they had to do was win one more game at that point to be among the final 4 of the NFL.
Right.
And in a conference championship game. And they were at home the whole time, so you knew it was going to be a madhouse with that. So, and then again, like once you make a Super Bowl, it's 2 more weeks until you play in the Super Bowl. So basically, by just being one of the best teams in football, you could extend your football season upwards of 6 weeks to just go through a Super Bowl run. And literally right now, we're watching as everybody shifts to they're going to be one and done. So because of that, like if you would have told me 6 weeks ago that the weekend that the Flyers play a back-to-back at 1:00 at Wells Fargo Center, which is literally the same week as divisional round of the playoffs, that A, the Eagles wouldn't have a home game that weekend, and B, may not even be in the playoffs, I would have told you were nuts.
Fair.
We were having conversations. I was having conversations in the press box about the possibility of, is there even going to be a reason that we show up to one of these games because we don't want to deal with the crowd that comes
Eagles
in
traffic,
especially if the season's a waste. Like
exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like if it's to the point where it's like, do I really feel like coming down to watch the Flyers play the Senators and both teams may not be great and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
No.
Like,
and
when I can do my job from home anyway, I can do a portion of it from home. And now it's not going to be a competition.
No, the Flyers have played well enough that, of course, 5 straight losses and they're still in pretty tough shape. Don't get me wrong. Like they're still not the type of roster that can erase a 6, 8, 10 point deficit. They're just not. But as we sit here right now, they are continuing to play meaningful games. And, we'll get into our looking ahead towards the end of the show, obviously, but they have 4 games this week. And their record currently has guaranteed that all 4 of those are meaningful games. Because you are still, at this point, we've talked about it before, the players, the coach, are still in win, acquire points, try to get into playoffs mode. They are. And
they are, and they're not at the same time, kind of, because the coach will not talk about playoffs, which I give him credit for.
Of course, but I just mean in terms of winning games, and you're not looking at a rebuild. You are coming into every single game looking to get 2 points.
Well, because that your coach is literally not even looking at. We do looking ahead, and we're going to talk about 4 games. The coach is looking at 1.
Correct.
Hey, what's the next game? How do we win the next game? We're moving on to it. That's that, right? Like that's all he ever talks about.
Right.
And this is what I like about, because the period I'm talking about where you kind of started to feel like there was a shift in the way people were responding to this team, that Pittsburgh game and stuff like that. It was
the point streak.
But that was the game after the one they won in overtime at home against Pittsburgh. That was the game after the when we got the gem of all gems, if we were looking to title an episode, which was the why do we win? Because we've got balls, right?
Yep. Oh, so remember, okay. I'm not saying this is not me saying that the Philadelphia Flyers are going to win the cup. Don't get it.
And I've said the same thing for what it's
remember when Tampa Bay won the cup and they got the $110 million or whatever it was, their salary number, they got it printed on t-shirts.
Oh yeah, sure.
The Flyers are going to do that with "We've got balls."
Well, there's already t-shirts out there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there was already t-shirts out there, because I told my wife and we bought one for my brother-in-law, because I said my brother-in-law would wear this 1,000%.
Oh yeah. Can I talk about my favorite game since our last show?
I'm curious to hear what yours is, because I've got a handful that I will go off of since our last show, and they're all kind of relatively early, but
December 22nd, Detroit Red Wings.
I wanted to get to that one. So this is where I was leading up to, because this is why I was on the Jersey game first, because that obviously kept the point streak, the winning streak kind of going and stuff like that. And that's another example. When you win a game in overtime, you're thrilled, right? Like there's and especially when it was unexpected. It looked like New Jersey was pushing. And then all of a sudden here comes Owen Tippett, creates a turnover, buries a great shot, celebrate it, right? Like, and I went on the air the day after on 97.3 and said something about, isn't it nice that after the last handful of years, and you'll probably agree with this because we've done the show all that time, isn't it nice to feel something when a team wins a game in overtime and not feel like, and not have the immediate reaction be, oh cool, they won, like kind of like throwing it away. No, like they won, and it feels like the days when we would do the show in, I guess maybe 2020 for all I care. Like,
well, the season leading into 2019, 2020, absolutely. But no, I am excited. It is fun to be a Flyers fan again.
Sure, that's exactly the point too.
Exactly. And we will talk about the future. We will talk about the prospects. We will talk about the week ahead. We will talk about all of that. But as it sits right here, right now, the current team on the ice is fun. Think about it. I'm going to name a player. You tell me if they're fun or not fun.
Okay.
Travis Konecny.
Oh, of course he's fun.
Joel Farabee.
Yep. Absolutely.
Owen Tippett. Bobby Brink. Travis Sanheim. Ups and downs. Sure.
Right. And a lot of them have had them lately, and we'll definitely get into that part of it.
And I am by no means saying that these are perfect players. I am not even saying that they are elite quality NHL players at the current moment.
Right.
But boy, are they fun. Are the Philadelphia Phillies the best team in baseball every year?
No.
Okay. Are they the most fun team in baseball every October?
They can be. I mean,
yes. The answer is yes, Kevin. Come on.
The answer is yes in Philadelphia, and there's other people who would say
not just Philadelphia. Unless you're playing against the Philadelphia Phillies.
No, it does.
They're the most fun team in baseball.
Well, okay, and that's my point. Like, yes, in the playoffs, when everybody else, when there's however many teams, half of the league is sitting at home watching somebody. Like right now, nobody else is going to talk about the Flyers being as fun as everybody here is going to think they are, because they're not glued to it every night. And there's 31 other teams that are playing. But when you get down to it and you start to, like, I will admit to you, and this is where you're right about this, there are more national people who are going to sit there and go, listen, they have a style at which they play. There's a vibe about them. Like, yeah, you got to acknowledge what is in front of you. Now, they're not watching it with as close of an eye and things like that, but like,
but let's look ahead, right? We're talking about the fact that they're reasonably likely at this point in time to make a push for the playoffs. And if they do make it, tell me this isn't a fun team to watch. You got scoring up top. You got some young talent. You got some sandpaper with your Tippett, or not your Tippett, your Delorier and your Hathaway and your Paling, or even, Paling provides a little grit. Scott Lawton is fun in the playoffs. This team has everything it takes to be a fun team. Again, I'm not saying they're making deep runs, but man, they're going to be fun.
They're fun. I mean, the last couple of weeks have shown some of, like, and I hate to do it. I have to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Okay.
Because the last few weeks have shown some of the flaws, and that's only fair. I mean, let's put it this way, Travis Konecny, I give him all the credit in the world, because Konecny came back. Well, not came back, but they came back from the break, right? And half the team's battling something, to the point where even you would know this without being around the team, because if you put a game on this week, wherever you are, and happen to get the NBC Sports Philly feed, you could tell. I mean, Jim Jackson's playing through it.
Oh, yeah. He's
barely any voice left at certain points, and is trying to give you his
soldiering
goal calls,
on.
And he's not completely there. Like, even Saturday, he's still going through it. I mean, this has been about a week he's been going through it, and he's still going through it, because his goal call when Konecny scored shorthanded, which was the eventual game winner, sounded a lot like the Jeremy Roenick call, where he's screaming his head off because you can't even hear in the building. That's the story about the Roenick call, because that building was so loud in overtime up until that goal happened. But he's trying to muscle through, but half the team had it. Had something of the sort, like battled through something. So Konechny's not only sick, he plays the next game after coming back from the break, takes a shot off the instep of his skate. Now he's hobbling around, to the point where before the first Calgary game, he went out pregame and just tested it.
Yep. Just
to see that he could put a skate on and skate.
Well, and the team has played well enough this season, and we talked about the fact that when they were winning games, they were, good, sustainable, metrics-backed wins, right? To the point where the numbers said that they were, beating teams for real. They have done that for a large enough chunk of the season at this point that I'm willing to give them a little bit of a pass for a rough stretch like this.
Well,
because because of the illness going through the locker room, because of the fatigue, and you can see it. And we better hope they're feeling better, because I'm looking ahead to this schedule, and February is a tough month, or January is a tough month. February is also a fairly full month.
I don't think there's
other than the All-Star break.
I don't think there's such a thing as an easy stretch right now, because of how close everybody is. Like,
but the Flyers play 12 games over the next 3 weeks. It's 4 games a week.
I've already called January's the gauntlet. If you can run through the gauntlet of January and then get to a point where at least February offers a few more natural breaks.
If you make the All-Star break and you're still where you're at now, especially given the fact that most of your team is going to have a week to recover.
Right.
Oh boy, time to go. Time to at least think about it.
Sure. And again, I'm going to do the same thing I've done multiple weeks over, because we just said it with Carolina, because Carolina's 3 points ahead of the Flyers, right?
Yep.
3 points in one direction. The Flyers are top 8 in the league.
Yep.
6 points go to 40. 6 points the other direction, they're 23rd. Like, that's the gap. So that's why I'm saying there's no such thing as a light week. Like, they're gonna like somewhere coming up, they're gonna play St. Louis in about I think it's about a week. It's a week from Monday.
I will be there.
There you go.
Very excited. If you're in St. Louis, come find me. I don't know.
But St. Louis is 21st in the league. You're tied for 20th in the league, and yet they're 5 points behind where the Flyers are. Same number of wins, by the way.
Yep.
Like, does that not make it like same thing?
Yep.
That's not an easy game. Just means even Montreal is at 39 points, and the Flyers play them this week. That easy?
No.
You're still going to have to deliver. That's why Calgary was tough, because Calgary's at 39 points. Like, there's only a handful of teams, maybe 5, that we can, out of the 32, that we can look at and say, you are definitively not part of the playoff picture right now.
Yeah.
Definitively. And then there's doubts for others. Like, it's going to be a long way back for some of these other teams. Like, you would have to really turn it around quick. Like, I think Montreal's one of those teams, to be honest, because Montreal's got to pass so many teams to get there.
And then
that's
on the
hard part, but points wise, they're not far.
On the other side of things, there's only 7 teams that I would consider locks for the playoffs. It's Vegas on up, basically, at this point in time.
Well, in Vegas, for what it's worth, by the way, Vegas has hit a slide of their own.
Yes.
That took them from top. Well,
you expect them to bounce back.
Well, it's not even that you expect them to bounce back. They carved out way more of a path by being top of the league for so long. That's like, oh, you hit a slide, you're still 7th in the league. Like,
yeah, it's crazy, and they're still only 3 points back. It's wild. By the way, Winnipeg, best team in the league as of right now.
Well, I mean, they've got probably one of the best goaltenders in the league. I mean, I feel like it's probably the Vezina's probably going to be a case of Hellebuyck and Demko,
who 8 months ago was threatening
not
to
signed,
leave
yeah,
and walk very clearly unhappy, and I gotta see which way this team's going, and was ready to leave. Man, him and Scheifele both signing those big old contracts. Blake Wheeler getting shift off to New York. Man, they've done a little bit of that addition by subtraction thing that the Flyers have done, right? Well, Blake Wheeler is their Kevin Hayes.
Well, and what else did they do? What was the other big one?
What's that?
They
fired their coach.
Pierre-Luc Dubois. Yeah, and Dubois went to LA, and they brought in how good of a season is Gabe Velarde having?
There's your addition by subtraction,
right? But because they got pieces.
You're right.
You got Velarde
addition by addition. They just
right. You just made a great hockey trade and seem like you've won.
And Pierre-Luc Dubois has looked good in LA, and they've it's worked out for both sides. But man,
it's worked out impressively for
it's worked
Winnipeg.
out really well for Winnipeg.
Sure.
Turns out that if you put high quality goaltending with high quality goal scoring with decent defense, it works out well.
I'm gonna be and don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to jump into the looking ahead part here.
Yeah.
But this is kind of a looking ahead / look back part. So you'll see where I'm going with this. I'm curious to see how they play Winnipeg, and I kind of have that because it's on the back end of a back-to-back and it's on the road. I kind of have that as a scheduled loss, kind of. The games ahead of that will be more matter more than whatever you can get out of this is whatever you can get.
Cross-border travel.
But I'm curious about how they play that game because of how well they've played Vancouver. Because that looked could there be a worse matchup to have based on where they were in the league standings to come back from a long break on? You wanted to bring up the game against Detroit. Now, this is why I'll bring this into the conversation. So they beat New Jersey in overtime. They finally have a regulation loss, which they were kind of due for. And what couldn't have been more perfect is it's the first game they don't get points in 10 games. They've had 9 straight games with points. That's the 10th. They don't get the points in 10 straight. And John Tortorella, after the game, is practically pounding the podium over you don't go 1-on-4. That's what cost us. We can't be like that. We got to learn how to play in January and February. And it's the first game they've lost, or one of the, or the first game they didn't get points in the entire month of December.
Yep.
They'd only lost one other game in December to that point, to the same team that they just lost to that night, no less.
Right.
And he's pounding the desk over, you don't play like that. No 1-on-4s. That was that can't happen. It's got to be different. We got to learn how to check our way to wins. Okay, fine. And the next night, again, one of
the wildest hockey games in the last decade.
No, and again, possibly scheduled loss territory because again, you're playing a back-to-back going in and things like that. But I didn't have to watch much. I mean, they're down 2-0. They get a goal back. They give it back on a power play, and the 2 goals that followed to make it 5-1 by the end of the period. I just kept sitting there. I actually was over at my parents. I watched the game with my dad that night. And I even said they're doing exactly the opposite of what Torts said the night before.
Yep.
There's no checking involved whatsoever. So I said he's going to be thrilled after this first period.
I hope he's just going to filmed. I hope somebody filmed the locker room after the first period because whatever he said and did, oh boy.
Well, you're never going to see it because it's obviously not out there. So I don't think anybody filmed it.
Oh, you won't see it until late June, early July, maybe.
But either way, you're right, because they came out and they end up scoring a couple. And the thing was too, let's remember how the second period of that game really started. It didn't start with, hey, they scored a couple of goals or whatever. I mean, they scored 2 goals early in the period. What it really started with was exactly what you would expect in a 5-1 game. Something happens. Guy gets hit. Here comes Nick Seeler. I'm fighting you. And Nick Seeler got flat out kicked out of the game for it.
Yep.
Which, by the way, and
debatable.
Not even that it was debatable, but by the way, I know calls are going to be questionable and things like that. Please, if the NHL wants to do one thing right about this, because this night they screwed it up so badly, it was pathetic. announce the calls properly so that people have an understanding of what happened. Because the way they announced it was, we're giving everything to Sealer, and this guy gets like a 2-minute penalty or something.
Right, and it's going to be like a 5-minute major, and like, yeah.
Right. Like they almost made it like they were going to get
like a 5-minute
power
penalty.
play.
Yeah, power play.
You know, and which, by the way, at that point would have meant game over. And instead, it evened itself out because all that was really given was that Sealer got himself kicked out. And by the way, because they didn't announce it properly, Sealer blows his top, just absolutely loses it. But here's the thing. Nick Sealer is one of the most soft-spoken guys in the room. He's a good personality. I'm not saying he's not he's a bad personality, but he's a fun guy. He's a nice guy. He's one of those types of guys. And to see him like that, boy, did that light a fire under the rest of the team.
And they came out and had just
not right away. Like they started off. They scored
the 2 quick goals right away. Right. That really gets you back in the game because now it's 5-3.
Right, it's 5-3, and there's 16 minutes to go in the second period. So you start thinking,
it's a whole new game.
Right. Yeah. But then the play kind of evened out for the rest of the second period, and they were pushing, don't get me wrong, but it was like, okay, kind of settled back in. And then did it all come together super quick. Like they got another goal 6 minutes into the third period. Now it's a 1-goal game. And because of that, now you're already thinking,
yep,
there's 14 minutes left to get one.
Yep.
And it took a while. I mean, there was 6.5 minutes left in the game when they finally got the game tying goal. But and Scott Lawton, who hadn't scored in forever, it felt like, gets that one. And you're like, okay, that's a big moment right there. They just tied the game, and you saw the energy. And a minute and a half later, they scored again, and they took the lead. And you're going, holy crap. Now that not only did they tie the game, they might win the thing. There's 5 minutes left. And the unfortunate part is what happened immediately after, because Carter Hart was in goal that night and got shelled in the first period.
Yep.
Just got absolutely shelled. And it wasn't his fault, obviously, because nobody showed up in front. But nobody looked in front, showed up in front of him. The team was terrible. And then he played brilliantly for the rest of it, keeping them involved in the game, giving up nothing. Because literally at that point, when you're at 5-1, you can't give up anything if you want to even have a prayer as you start to chip away. Like once you realize you had a game on your hands at 5-3 in the second period, he can't give up anything for the rest of the game.
He's got to be perfect
while you're trailing, or you're done, right? And he was. And then of course it was like the shot below the goal line that leaks through, and it can't happen. But it's a bad goal, and you got to own it. And unfortunately, that was probably the difference between them getting 2 points that night and getting 1, because once it got to overtime, they got dominated in the overtime.
Yeah.
And then the shootout, the shootout was no match either. So
can I tell you an absolute horror story about that game?
Sure.
I live bet them down 5-1.
Oh, what were the odds on that?
It was crazy. I don't even remember.
It had to be like something like plus 2,000-3,000.
I was turning $5 into like 20, like $30, something crazy.
It had to. Oh, that seems generous as far as
something like, it was something wild. I went to cash out after they scored, and as I'm hitting cash out,
it locked because they scored again. Yep.
Painful.
That's a shame.
Anyway,
but again, that's the type of game, because everybody would have understood at 5-1 if that's the end of the story.
If you call it a night, right?
Especially with the break happening.
Last game before Christmas, right?
Right. And that's kind of the hard thing about the stretch of 8 games that we're talking about, because it's all like, it was also easy to look at the way that the stretch ended before the break and go, the dramatics of the overtime win in New Jersey that give you like that vibe again. All right, you took a loss in regulation to Nashville, and then you had every reason to roll over after 5-1 against Detroit, and instead somehow got a point out of that game, which you will take every day of the week. If someone told you after 20 minutes you spotted them a 5-1 lead, you're going to still get this game to overtime.
That is a playoff team point.
Sure is.
Yep. And you come back from Christmas break.
Sure, with again, one of the, again, this is what I was saying, a matchup that looks like on paper you're going to hate it because nobody's played, so you're going to come in, there's going to be a rust factor.
Back-to-back Vancouver, Seattle.
Well, that's not even the part. That wasn't even the part I was worried about. It was the very first game, because Vancouver was still at the top of the league.
That's true.
You're coming back from 6 days of nothing, and you're going, There's because the rust factors, but the rust factors coming. Yep. But the rust factors coming in, and it kind of almost turned it into the reverse of what happened. You got to find a way to get through. If you can grind through this game and maybe get something out of it, because you're probably going to have to win in Seattle to make this first part of the trip feel good. Right. And instead, they were deadlocked in a 0-0 game for almost 2 periods and then scored 3 goals in 2 minutes and 6 seconds. And the game was turned on its head right there.
And that was it. Yep. And
well, it wasn't though, because here's the thing: as much as it looked like it, because I'm right there with you. 3-0 through 2 periods, the way it was going, sure looked like it was. Right. Well, it should be. And then they had a horrible first shift that gave up a goal to Vancouver right away. So all of a sudden now it's 3-1. So it's a game again immediately. And then within minutes of that happening, Sam Erson's got to come out of the game because, well, he wasn't hurt. He was dehydrated. So
okay, right. I'm sorry.
But still, it means now Carter Hart's got to come in cold against this
Frankly, I think that was a blessing in disguise because he got a chance to play 8 or 9 minutes in a game that they had a multi-goal lead. And
it probably
it helped get him basically a practice for him before the Seattle game.
It was a little bit, but still in a game where you're leading 3-1 against a team that had
as good as Vancouver's
has been all offense and scores upwards of 5 and 6 a night. Sometimes it feels like, because that's how powerful they've been on offense. You know what's coming with them. You got Pedersen, Besser, Quinn Hughes, JT Miller. They're all coming at you, and they're going to be a shooting gallery. And it's 3-1. And oh, by the way, not long after that happens, you take a penalty. So now Carter Hart is being greeted into the game with, here comes Vancouver's power play.
Here comes Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, Quinn Hughes.
Right. Yeah. And instead, within 10 seconds, the power kill delivers and scores. And that kind of calmed everything back down for a second, because now it's like, 3-goal lead restored.
Now we're a little more chilling.
Right. Because, by the way, in the middle of all that, Erson's got to leave. Hart's in cold. They get a power play in a 3-1 game. It all looks like it could unravel. Oh, by the way, Travis Konecny's not on the bench right now either. And he doesn't come back. And they have no update. So you're going, now what? Like, what happens if you and believe me, talk about foreshadowing, because what if it wasn't just, hey, he was sick.
Right.
And it was something else, because how many goals since then has Konecny scored? He's kind of on one of those heaters again right now, right?
He is on an absolute heater. I just looked, and so he scored the next night in Seattle. Spoiler alert.
Shorthanded, by the way.
Shorthanded.
Spoiler.
In the first period. As it sits here right now, he has 21. So he scored that goal.
I believe it's 4 goals in the last 5 games or something like that.
Right.
Since
hello?
Vancouver, yeah, I know.
Named to the All-Star team.
Yeah. Well. Shout out there, by the way, because and for what it's worth, by the way. So I knew the announcement, like the All-Star game announcement, was coming up ahead of the Thursday game.
Kind of assumed it was Travis Konecny.
I started writing a story to put up because I lumped it together. There's not much to talk about with an All-Star game selection, so I lumped it together with another piece of information we're going to get to later in the show that is not related to the current team but a future thing. And I did it as a notebook. And I'm like, and as I'm sitting here going, I got to mention the All-Star thing, I just flat out started writing Konecny named All-Star, because it was like, well, who else do you give it to?
Right.
Like, he's been their best player by a mile.
Absolutely. And Travis Sanheim probably had an argument for the first couple of weeks of that. But
I wondered if any of the goalies did too, by the way. I just don't think they had enough playing time.
Right. I was going to say, I think if either one of them was played 25 games, then I think we'd have a little more discussion. But I don't think either guy has played enough to really get that kind of breakout success.
Right.
Especially because Erson's numbers are still recovering from the really rough start he had. Right.
Well, the first couple of games, and then because one of the things I had said kind of as the week went on was, obviously they came back from break and Erson had a great game against Vancouver before he had to leave the game. The Calgary game was a little bit more like typical of a goalie. Like, he gave up 3 goals. That's not terrible by any stretch, but it was kind of like, I feel like Harrison probably wanted like the 2-on-1 that Kadri scored on in that first game.
He would have liked that one back.
Like, and not in the sense that it's a bad goal to give up, but just one of those ones where it's like, you need a save, or for where the team was, you need a save. By the way, how about that one for a Wild game, by the way, because that didn't, again, that was one that, and I've highlighted that Calgary game, the first one, as the most disappointing game of the road trip, because they win against Vancouver. Okay, the next night you're all the travel and illness and everything coming out of a long break. You're fighting it against Seattle, and you still got the thing to overtime and got yourself a point in the game, and you should be thrilled with 3 out of 4 to start that trip.
Yeah,
but the hope is you do your travel again, you get to Calgary, you have an entire day, to kind of recover a little bit, and you hope you have the legs this time against Calgary in the third game of that trip, and they didn't.
Nope.
And they got kind of what they deserve, because again, I know it says 4-3 on the score, but it was a different time. Yes, they led 1-0. Once they gave up a goal, the push was on. They gave up the second one. Then it was 3-1, and they fought with the goalie pulled, but it was 3-1. But it was 3-1 with 4 minutes left.
Yep.
Let's be real about what kind of game that was. That was much more of a regulation loss, as like a 4-2 loss would be, than it was the other way around.
If you had gotten a point there, you would have been saving a point.
Which by the way, and it's just like it always cracks me up when games end the way that game does, where the goal that was scored into an empty net turns out to be the game winner. Like it's just a weird thing.
It's so annoying.
Like, you know what I mean? Because, like, in other words, you did enough to come back from what was actually scored on you, and if you didn't pull the goal, which, by the way, I will argue this as well. Okay, down by 2, you want to pull the goalie with 4 minutes left, pull the goalie with 4 minutes left. You're struggling to get anything generated, and you're down 2. When they got it back to 1 really quickly, and it was like 3.5 minutes left, I'm waiting a minute and a half until I pull that goalie again. And he pulled him right away, and they got scored on almost right away, and that kind of erased that.
Yeah, and I like, it's hard to criticize it because in the moment,
right,
I
both
like the aggressiveness.
Right, and they're all about aggressive. Like, that's been their style all year. So
absolutely, that's what you don't get to 400 shorthanded goals without being aggressive. And I'm exaggerating, but like, it doesn't seem like by very much now, does it?
Well, speaking of which, because so they play Edmonton. And
Connor McDavid does stupid Connor McDavid things.
Sure. Now, Travis Konecny had another goal in that game, by the way. So maybe actually I might be selling him short then. Is that 5 then?
Something like that.
In the last 5 games? Because I forgot that he even scored in that game, because that game was forgettable.
Yeah, it would be 5 in the last 5. 17, 18, 19.
Of course
20,
it is.
21. Yeah.
All right. So anyway. And yes, that was I can summarize that game in 4 words. The Connor McDavid show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fine. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
The goal that I'm trying to remember which one it was. Actually, I guess it was the game winner. It was the power play goal that they scored at the end of the second period for Nugent Hopkins, because it nearly is a break the other way for Konecny. And there's people who are going, yeah, you might want to chill with that because you know who's on the ice, and if you don't get it, then but I even said that's a situation of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because if you do try to play that aggressive, sure, maybe it turns into something, maybe it turns into an opportunity and you're out of the play because of it. But what are you going to do? Like, what are you supposed to do? Acknowledge that, well, McDavid's on the ice and all these other talented players are around him, but McDavid's clearly the best. I get that.
Right.
I'm just going to sit back and let whatever happens because I got to respect the best player in the world.
It's like, well, no, you force him back on his heels.
Or do you do what has worked for everything else all year long and take the chance on it because that's how you've had success? They tried to play to a strength and it didn't work. And then
it backfired. It happened.
And then as soon as they scored again early in the third period, that was dagger, game over, whatever. And I mean, they hung in there, but again, you didn't have the legs or talent to compete with that team or with McDavid.
And sometimes the fact of the matter is, sometimes the best player in the world puts 5 points on the board against you.
Well, and that's a stark reminder, to all due respect to Travis Konecny and his 5 goals in the last 5 games. You are not Connor McDavid, and I'm not trying to say that as like that.
Right,
Konecny
nobody
tries
is.
To be. Well, and I'm not trying to say that as to say that Konecny tries to be.
Right.
I'm saying that as in Travis Konecny is your best forward,
correct,
by far.
And Travis Konecny is a very, very good hockey player.
But he does not fall into that take over the game category.
There is terminology,
at least on a nightly basis. I'm sure. Konecny has games where he's the guy out there trying to be like, we're not losing.
There is terminology,
but it doesn't happen nightly.
There is terminology that is used in mixed martial arts, and there's levels to this, and there's levels to everything, right? There's levels to striking, there's levels to grappling, there's levels to wrestling, and you can be really, really good. You can be world class in a discipline, but there's always somebody better than you. And you can be a really, really, really good hockey player. You can even be Leon Draisaitl. You're not the best player in the world. Yeah, you can be Austin Matthews. You can be, if your name is not Connor McDavid, you're not the best player in the world. It is that simple.
I hear you.
But yeah, no, he does.
And that's why, like that, and again, that's probably why the Calgary game was so disappointing, because Edmonton's been better since the coaching change. They've crawled their way back towards a playoff spot. Like they're right. I'm going to check. Are they in one or are they just barely out?
Who's that?
Edmonton. They're in. They're in right now. If it started today, they're in.
Yep.
So there you go. At the time, they weren't. Obviously, they were still coming back up on it. But like
the fact that their goal differential isn't the most important stat, but the fact that they're plus 18 leads me to think that they're getting in.
So they're heating up. So you kind of had a feeling that, like, obviously, this is not the Edmonton Oilers you faced 4 games into the season.
No,
it's not even the Jay Woodcroft.
Connor's putting his foot on the gas.
Right. Putting his foot on the gas so much that he's going to I don't have a doubt in my mind he'll overtake the points lead. He's on his way to another Art Ross probably, and like that's the end of that.
I would be really appreciated if he scored more than 42.5 goals. That would be great. Thank you. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about what? What's he up to?
No.
I want to know I just want to know what his season total is.
I may or may not have a parlay that has Ovechkin over 25.5.
He's heated up a little bit too, by the way.
McDavid over 42.5. Kucherov over 44.5.
The Kucherov one's hitting.
And then a tough one because of the recent injury news, Connor Bedard over 33.5.
Yeah, okay, so Kucherov, you're safe. The Bedard one is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, the problem is it's the parlay.
I know.
Yeah, but anyway.
Well, the one thing I will give you with the Bedard side of it is that he did carve out a good amount before all of this.
Yeah, how many does he have?
He's at 15.
He's at 15. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. He had a point where he was scoring nightly.
And you know what? I will say he has started to look, I'm not going to say bad, but he has started to look human. And I think having a couple of weeks off may be good for his.
You might not be wrong about that. Like,
especially because it's an upper body injury, right? Fractured jaw. He might come back in 2 weeks and just wear a cage type of thing. But I think those 2 weeks off will be real good for his legs.
We'll certainly see about that. What I'm interested to see is, depending on how long the timeline is for whatever's going on. Like, obviously he fractured his jaw. I know what that is, but like whatever's going on, is there
specifically
surgery?
Right?
Well, is there surgery? Is there not? Is it just gonna, how does it gonna work?
And I assume they're not rushing him,
right? And how quickly does he want to come back and feel like he can come back and play, all that stuff,
right?
Because it wasn't surprising. Like, I know you see a guy get hit near the head and it's like, oh, probably concussion, right? No, he got up and he's holding his head like his mouth, not like, oh my goodness, my head.
You can tell the difference. You can tell the difference between a guy holding his mouth and a guy holding his head.
Right. And I just went, if that's a fractured jaw, then
that's no good. Right.
Right. And it's a shame too, because like he did right before, not long before, it was when he was on his last little bit of scoring, of a scoring heater in his own right, on a bit of a scoring streak. He pulled off the Michigan.
Yeah, he did. The same night Trevor Zegras did. Crazy.
And no offense to Bedard, Zegras did it even better than Bedard did, because Zegras did it all in one motion.
Zegras was,
and on his offhand too. Like,
so like I'm not nitpicking the whatever. It was insanely impressive, but it almost wasn't a Michigan. It was like a drive-by Michigan. Right. He didn't even scoop it. Like, I feel like the Michigan. No, because he was on his back. He was on his backhand, literally turned the stick over and then just scooped it on the toe. Deposited it into the top corner of the net. It was absolutely insane. Do I want to mention a conversation that we've had in the past about this? Because you texted me that night and go, tell me who's the first Flyer to pull off the Michigan and why is it Matvei Michkov, who's attempted it probably about 7 or 8 times in the KHL. Mm-hmm. He's going to get it. He's really tried, and he keeps attempting it, so I wouldn't be shocked. But nonetheless, so Bedard pulls off the Michigan, by the way. And I think I shared the video on Twitter, and I'm like, should we just give out the call? Like, no, should we just give the caller out now?
Like, seriously. And of course, like, what's the one thing that would prevent him from getting the Calder?
An injury.
Because he's not playing. Because there are other really good rookies. Like, we have to acknowledge that there's other good rookies out there. I mean, Luke Hughes is one for sure. Who's the goalie that people are talking about that I can't seem to like? There's a goalie out there who's in that conversation that people were saying something about.
It's not Devin Levi because he struggled this year.
At the beginning it was. At the beginning it was. There were a lot of people that thought Levi was going to be in that category. I thought there was one. I'll look up who people like had in the Calder race because there's a few others. There's a few others obviously out there or whatever. I mean, Fantilli hasn't really done enough to get on the board like that, and like in terms of the rankings of who wins this thing. Leo Carlson's getting kind of game management, so he's not playing all the time either. And actually, I think he just got hurt recently too, so he probably took himself right out of the running of that too, right?
Yeah. The great thing about the awards is you can do all the preseason predictions you want, you can do all the mid-season predictions you want, but if somebody gets hurt, it changes absolutely everything.
Well, sure, like, and I'll give you a good example, by the way, because I'm not disputing this in the slightest, okay? Because if you're talking about who's had one of the best seasons to this point, Nathan MacKinnon is right up there in terms of heart possibilities.
Absolutely.
And yet, are we gonna like who's gonna pick against? And Kucherov's right up there too, but who's going to pick against McDavid if McDavid leads the team back to the playoffs and leads in scoring?
Right, because we assume he will. It's absolutely wild to assume that, but we assume he will. Like, he's got such a big gap that he has to cover, but we just kind of assume it's going to happen.
Sure.
Right, the league lead right now is 66 points. He has 54. He's 12 points down, but we all assume it's going to happen.
Okay, maybe it wasn't a goalie, but okay, but this is a name that I've seen come up a lot. Brock Faber from Minnesota.
Okay. That's fair.
Who has come in and like almost immediately since coming into play for Minnesota turned into like a top pairing defenseman.
Right, and has immediately just been running their number one power play. It's wild. Literally.
Right. Like there's like everybody was picking Bedard obviously for that and things like that, but like that's if you supplant, like if you're Brock Faber and you come in a year where Adam Fantilli was going to be playing and Leo Carlson was going to be playing and those guys were not right at the top either, then like it's pretty astounding, It's so funny. This most recent ESPN article that I'm reading, that was basically right around New Year's Day, that has who's leading for all of these things. For all for pretty much every category, I'm not even kidding. Like for the Hart Trophy, they don't even list McDavid as among the top 3 right now.
Silly.
Neither. Well, no, because I think since the beginning of the week, he's put up that many points.
Oh yeah.
Like,
well, putting 5 up against the Flyers helps.
Sure. Like he wasn't even mentioned in the category. And then obviously, like we'll eventually look at like the next time they run this, it'll be a lot more McDavid, I think, because right now there's still a lot of a fascination with what Vancouver's done, and let's put it this way, in Vancouver's case, I would say at this given moment, Demko's the leader for the Vezina, and Quinn Hughes is probably the leader for the Norris. At this given moment. Now, obviously, subject to change in a lot of ways, but I would say that that's the case for now.
I think that's fair at the current moment.
So I do also think, by the way, if I'm being, if we're being blunt about the awards, because I said that, because in the same vein, right? So the same night that I'm watching 2 guys pull off the Michigan and whatnot, I think Austin Matthews scored 2 goals that night too, and I was pretty much ready to go. Just give him the Richard now.
Yeah.
Like the guy's got his scoring touch back.
Mean, but Kucherov's going to hang with him. Like you can't just give it to him. Kucherov's right with him.
The only reason I don't completely agree with you is because at the time they were hanging with each other, and then Matthews has hit a little bit of a low in the last couple
right.
of
I mean,
games.
he's 2 ahead, but Sam Reinhart's right there too.
On that? I don't know if Reinhart's going to keep that up the whole year compared to Matthews and Kucherov.
Is Sam Reinhart on pace for 60? He's pretty close. That's crazy.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, to be fair, Is there a chance that McKinnon gets his name into the top 5 pretty soon? He's scoring at a crazy clip right now.
That is true. He has
McKinnon's
really
at
put that
22
team on his back. He has decided that he wants to make the playoffs again, please.
By the way, Travis Konecny tied for 11th still.
Yeah,
just
still hanging around, and it's pretty good. All right.
You realize that since we're coming up on the halfway point, his pace for the season is 43 roughly.
Yeah, it's pretty good, man.
Or actually, at this point, it's more than, it's got to be more than that since he added another one. It's probably 44-ish. You know, like if he scores one more goal in the next 2 games, he's on pace for 44.
And if you told me that before the season, I'd be happy with that. Travis Konecny scored
be happy.
If you
would
told
be
me
thrilled. That was the last time I had a 40-goal score.
If you told me before the season that Travis Konecny is scoring 44 goals this year, I would have said, with who?
Yeah, right.
Literally, what team is he on? Who did we get for him? What was the deal?
Like, serious, and I'm being dead serious. When was the last time they had a guy who scored 40 goals? Like, not even in the 19. Like, obviously, there's a few years in there where it's lean because they didn't play many games. Like, you're not going to get a 40 unless you're Austin Matthews. You're not going to get a 40-goal scorer in a 56-game season. Not on this team.
I don't know the last Flyer to score 40. It might be Jeff Carter.
That's what I was getting at. Like, even the year that Giroux scored had 102 points, he only had 34 goals.
Right.
And that was the last like major season that you can even look at. We got Wayne Simmons at 31 in 2016-17. Simmons at 32 in 15-16. So I'm going back pretty far already. Yep.
Jeff Carter, 08-09, 46 goals.
That's when it was?
Yep. According to StatMuse.
Wow. Like, I was just going year by year over. Well, that's the 13 season was a lockout year, so that didn't count.
Oh, yeah.
Even 2011, 2012, when they looked like they weren't okay, that's as close as somebody's been in a long time anyway. I'll give it that. Scott Hartnell had 37 in 2011, 2012.
Okay.
That's as close as I think anybody's been.
Travis Konecny might do it this year. Owen Tippett might do it at some point in his career. Joel Farabee's got potential to do it at some point in his career. And that's just guys on the roster.
Right. Yeah, you got it right. Jeff Carter had 46 in 08-09.
Crazy. And he might be the last one since Lindros at that point.
Nope. I just found
the
last one since then because the same year we're talking about, Simone Gagne had 34.
Whew, not bad.
2 years earlier in 06-07, he had 41. And the year before that, which, by the way, if you know,
I should have guessed Gagne.
The year before that was 05-06, which if anybody doesn't remember what year that was the first year with Forsberg.
Yeah.
That was the dynamic duo. And then eventually Knubel was part of that group as well.
That was the first year out of the lockout, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He had 47 goals that year. So that might be the closest to 50 since probably Leclerc.
Okay. Yeah.
It would have to be, right?
Listen, it's been a very long time, and I'm just saying, listen.
If Konecny can get himself to 40.
If this team has a 40-goal scorer, if Travis Sanheim gets anywhere back to where he was in the first 15, 20 games of the season, that'd be great. And you have
off a little.
And you have the goaltending duo that you have. Why not?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean,
not.
The interesting part is, and listen, I'll start by saying this right away because this will kind of start to wrap our go over the last handful of games and whatnot before we get to the ahead part down the road.
Yep.
It was going on. I guess I did an on-air spot before the Columbus game, and ironically, this is exactly the opposite of what happened because the question I got asked was, based on what has happened over the last week or so and on the losing streak, what do you want to see happen now that they're coming home for 4 games? What do you want to see happen? And my answer was along the lines of, I want somebody who's not what I want to see is somebody not named Travis Konecny and Joel Farabee score because the entire offense was running through those two. And that night, who scored 2 goals? The All-Star.
Yep.
And that was the only 2 goals they had. And then, by the way, they didn't use him in a shootout, which is interesting.
It's wild.
And I understand, there's an element where I understand why they didn't, but because you're trying to pick the skill guys. Couturier let it off because Couturier's kind of found some success with that move he's made.
And he didn't do the little half backwards skate. Good for him.
And then you turn to 2 younger guys like Brink and Forrester, who I'm sure are trying to pull off some stuff in practice and things like that. But maybe you tap the guy on the shoulder who's already scored tonight twice and go like,
Right.
"Hey, find some.
Hey,
see if
do
you can't find a
keep
way."
us in this one? Yeah. By the way, since I feel like we've mentioned betting a lot this episode, I did want to throw out there Travis Konecny with 5 goals in the last 5 games, and there is nobody he loves scoring against more than the Pittsburgh Penguins. Do with that information what you will. This is not advice. Please bet responsibly. Okay.
Funny.
We don't have a partner, but if you'd like to sponsor us, we are willing to have the conversation.
Anyway, back to the Calgary game for a second, because also, by the way, I want to talk about the Columbus game first for a second with this, because John Tortorella has done a lot of good things this year and has pushed a lot of the right buttons and all that kind of thing. I think that what you saw from John Tortorella's lineup on Thursday against Columbus was a little bit of what I'm going to use a term that I've used to discuss what the trade deadline could be like for the team if they go full bore sell, despite being in a potential spot. Because I've said, would they be willing to? You're not going to buy, but would you be willing to let this thing ride out and give the players an opportunity to see if they can finish what they started without changing it up too much, too radically? Or do you just sell and essentially sabotage your chance at a playoff run? And I think that against Columbus, John Tortorella sabotaged the chance to give them an opportunity to win a game. Because ultimately, I get guys are struggling. And that's why I even said, you want to see other guys besides Konecny and Farabee producing offensively. Because that's kind of what it revolved around. They had gone on a 4-game road trip, and 5 out of 10 goals were scored by defensemen. The other 5 were 2 for Travis Konecny, 1 for Joel Farabee, a shorthanded goal for Garnet Hathaway, and then, oh, by the way, Bobby Brink at 6-on-5 with the net empty.
Right.
Yeah, that's not exactly inspiring a lot of confidence in me and the offense's ability to do something right now.
Okay.
So I need to see it get back to what it was earlier in the month of December, all that, because it was a committee, like it was, hey, Owen Tippett did it this night, and here's a goal by Tyson Forrester, and here's a goal by Bobby Brink, and here's a goal by, you name it. They were kind of spreading the wealth a little bit more. It was, sure, was Farabee a key part of it? Was Konecny certainly a key part of it? Of course. But Couturier was going. Lawton contributed some goals in there. You had one game where 2 goals were scored by Ryan Poehling.
Yep.
And it's like, hey, they got a shot to win a game because Ryan Poehling's scoring some goals.
Absolutely.
Right?
And you do need depth scoring. And, the nice thing is this is still a season that may be considered a rebuilding season, depending on how it turns out.
Sure.
We mentioned the fact that they probably won't add. And what that means is that they won't be parting with any of their prospects. I think it's a good time to kind of transition over.
I want to finish the point that I was making about.
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
Because so you decide, because guys are struggling, and I get it. Cam Atkinson hasn't scored in 22 games.
Right.
It's the longest stretch without a goal in his career.
Tough.
And so, and truth be told, to add on to it, in Edmonton, he took the penalty that led to the game-winning goal.
Yeah,
so it starts to add,
great.
Right. So it starts to add up, and you go, okay, you want to sit Cam Atkinson for a game? Be my guest.
Fine.
It's gone on long enough. You rely on him for offense. It needed to, if it needs to happen, it needs to happen.
Give him a night.
Yeah. But to double down on it and throw Morgan Frost in the mix and say the same thing. And oh, by the way, to come home, and this is not like, I don't care. You want to send a message to Morgan Frost too? Be my guest again. Like we know the story by now. We don't have to go through it 20,000 times.
Right.
But you came home. So you want to throw Nick Delorier back in the lineup because you sat him the last game? Fine. Call up somebody instead of worrying about throwing Rhett Gardner in so he can get 7 minutes and then sit on the bench the entire third period in a game where you have a shot to win.
Yep.
If you want to talk about putting out the best, like you're going to play to win, you're going to try to do your best to win a game, you're going to put out the best lineup to win a game, and that's how you're going to handle it, because we don't tank, right? That was about as close to a tanking lineup as you could get. And you screwed yourself over in that game. So I don't love the way that was handled in the slightest, because of the fact, and it's not about the players coming out, it's about what you put back in. Right. And to not utilize them. You were already running 11-7 that night for the second straight game, mind you. Then don't take 2 of the forwards and sit them on the bench for the entire third period and roll three lines. 3
lines, basically.
And guess what? He did it again against Calgary, by the way. He still rolled 3 lines. He sat Delorier and Brink for the entire third period and essentially locked in on 3 lines.
Yep.
That is going to get you, and that's the concern going forward. You don't have more than a day off between games until midway through this month. You're going to run this team into the ground if you do it that way. And I understand the importance of trying to get points, but you've got to be somewhat conscious about, what the role is that guys bring. When they took Frost out of the lineup, you can say he's not delivering what needs to be delivered, which is offense. That's totally fair to say. But you are thin at center as a result after that, because you don't have any true centermen. You still don't have, and look, you're going to get reinforcements relatively soon. Noah Cates is on the path to come back soon. That will help. But until you have him back, you're running a center group that is Sean Couturier, who hadn't played in 2 years coming into this year. So the minutes are going to wear on him a little bit. It's got to. And then, oh, by the way, who's in your middle six at center? Ryan Poehling and Scott Lawton. Lawton doesn't even play his best center anymore. He's better on the wing. And Poehling is really a glorified fourth line center that you're trying to push into a middle six role.
Honestly, the way this season is kind of playing itself out, Noah Cates coming back from injury is kind of going to be your trade deadline acquisition, right?
It is, and I want to see what happens with Frost too, though, because Frost is a key part of this at this point, because every time he's out of the lineup, there's the discussion about this is never going anywhere. He's going to be a gone and forgotten about part of this thing sooner rather than later. And that may very well be true. But Tortorella talked the day after the Thursday game on Friday, talked the day after they lost to Columbus in the shootout, and talked about how Morgan Frost had a meeting with him that morning. That because of the road trip, because of everything that happened, he couldn't have the same kind of conversation he would have with players about coming in and out of the lineup. So he mentioned something briefly on the plane back from Edmonton, and then called him on Thursday because they didn't have a morning skate and said, "You're not in the lineup." And the next day, Frost went and requested a meeting with Tortorella, and apparently it was probably a little bit more tense than it would have been, like in terms of we're really going to air this thing out and we're going to bring it to a forefront. And Tortorella loved that.
I was going to say, that's got to be a good thing. That's got to be something that John Tortorella appreciates.
Maybe Tortorella went from talking about it like it is what it is to maybe there's a path. Yeah, because of this. And if they can salvage this somehow, and if Frost can deliver, because by the way, what did Frost do the very next game? Goal and an assist. Yep. Were they like the greatest? Was it his greatest game on earth? No, not even close. But did he put something up on the board that gives you something to look at? And was he present? Like he was, maybe the goal wasn't the most impressive or the assist wasn't the most impressive. But that's not the entirety of her game. He played with more of an edge, with speed, with more intensity in this game than he had probably for the previous 2 weeks to get to the point where they said bench him.
Sure.
And if that is a turning point, that may be something that we talk about as significant going forward.
Sure.
We will see.
Exactly, because like he's a young player, he's been bounced around the lineup a little bit. He's gone through all this COVID nonsense.
Right.
I could see him having some anxiety about getting scratched, this and that, some nagging thoughts in the back of the head. And he needed to come in and, have a little bit of a blowout with Torts. And obviously, I expect both guys to be professional and to continue showing up and to both do their jobs. But
Frost is definitely going to be that way. And I'll say this about Frost because of the fact that Tortorella brought this to, like, I mentioned this in his answer about it. He said Frost is kind of like, he's soft, like he's not much to get outspoken about anything. He's reserved, that kind of thing. And then he added, he's probably been told his entire life, don't push back against the coach.
Right.
Not that those conversations don't happen with the coach, but that's how Tortorella
you have to respect the coach.
Right. But that's how Tortorella wants his players to be. So now that Frost kind of got over that hurdle and was like, we're going to talk this out right now.
Obviously,
maybe that's where it is. I don't know.
Obviously,
I hope it is.
Obviously, I've never shared a locker room with John Tortorella, but he gives off big, if you have a problem, tell me about it energy. And even if the solution is, we disagree, we don't necessarily care for each other's opinion on the matter, we're both professionals. I understand where you are. You understand where I am.
Right.
We're both going to go out here, be professionals, and do what's best for the team. And that's all I need.
Sure. And the problem that you have right now with Frost in particular is that when Cates isn't available and if Cates isn't playing to a level where he has earned that spot, because he kind of wasn't at the beginning of the year either, and the injury just happened to come up when it did. Right now, Frost is your second line center because that's the best option you have.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
So that's how thin you are at center. Like I don't want to sit here and project that Frost is the second line center in the league. He's probably better as a third, but right now he's your second line center because after Couturier, he's the next best guy you have. Seriously. And until that changes, if you want to continue to push the narrative of rolling out the best lineup and trying to win, and it's about the next game, and that's all we're focused on, then he's got to play right now.
Yep.
And maybe that turns around as things go forward. 2 points in the last game is certainly a step in the right direction, among other things. Being noticeable in how you play is certainly another way to go about it. But I hope that's like, and that's why I wanted to bring that point up, is because it has less to do with the game against Calgary and more about, I hated that lineup against Columbus. Hated it because you knew what kind of game you were in for the second that it happened. And they damn near won the game anyway with it. But if you're worried about the fact that you only got 1 point, not 2, and by the way, Tortorella after the game, to answer everything, like, difficult, was it difficult to scratch? How difficult was it to scratch Cam Atkinson? It wasn't. What was the conversation, or what was the reasoning behind scratching both of them? That's between me and the athletes. Right. Were you worried about the possibility that they were going to run out of gas? No.
Nope.
Nope. But because to him, that, like, he's not going to present like, I totally screwed us over because of that, coming back from a road trip, illness, this, that, the other thing, he's not going to say that.
No,
we know that, but just recognize that you didn't play 2 of those forwards, who were fresh, by the way, because they didn't play the previous game, and you sat them on the bench for the entire third period and rolled out the 9 forwards that just grinded it out on a road trip, hoping to somehow, and as soon as you got scored on, the wall came crashing down.
Yep.
So just something to consider as they move forward, because they need to if they want to keep this magical run going, you got to keep the best players in the lineup as much as possible. And for what it's worth, also call the minor leagues and find out who's delivering a little bit more than a guy like Rhett Gardner, who I know you have intentions of sitting on the bench when it comes down to crunch time.
Yep, absolutely. And right now it's guys like Rhett Gardner. Next year, it may be some of these prospects. Are we? Is there anything else you wanted to address with kind of the current team? Or are we good to look forward?
Go ahead.
All right, so we're looking forward here, and man, the Flyers present is pretty exciting. We've kind of been talking about it for most of the show here, but boy, these last couple of weeks have been a treat as far as the future goes.
Sure.
Flyers prospects have been making waves, and we're gonna touch on a bunch of them here, but I think the main one, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, we're talking about the World Juniors, we're talking about Team USA, we're talking about the t-shirt that Kevin's wearing, we're talking about the jersey he's got behind him. We're talking about Cutter Gauthier, tied for the tournament lead in scoring for this year's World Juniors. The USA wins gold. They get to sing the USA wins gold song in the locker room afterwards. I know you've seen the video.
Oh, I know you loved every second of that too.
There were some guys in this tournament, as there is every year, that kind of break out. Right? World Juniors is one of those tournaments where the eyes of the hockey world are on that tournament for a week or two, right? Especially when the NHL is not in action, or the early group stage games. And a guy who really made a name for himself was Cutter Gauthier. He didn't have his best tournament. I know what you're going to say. We talked about it a little bit pre-show. He did not play his best hockey, but when it came down to it, he scores a big goal against,
his moment,
Finland, right?
Yes,
right.
He has his moment.
That's enormous goal against Finland.
Sure, because the problem with these tournaments is, and this is where it goes, Cutter Gauthier had 2 goals, 10 assists, 12 points throughout the course of the tournament itself, sure. Right? The problem is that so many of these teams, these countries that go and play in these tournaments, are so far below the level of a Team USA or a Team Canada that is more than an all-star team. It's like it's ridiculous, the level of talent. It's half the first round of the NHL draft is in these things.
And of course there are other good teams. Sweden typically has a pretty good team.
Finland plays teams tough, and
Czechia has had some good teams in the past. There have been programs have had their years, but typically on a year-to-year basis, yes, Canada and the US are a step above the competition.
Well, let's break it down simply, because you just mentioned 3 other teams that are in it, right?
Yeah.
I would say that 5 of the teams that are there are really good, and 5 of them are a step below.
Sure.
Easily. And it leads to games like I don't have it in front of me, but didn't they beat Latvia like 10-0 or something?
Yeah,
like
there was
that,
like a
or
10-2. Yeah, there
right?
was some
Like
rough ones.
games like
And
that
there
happen in
and
the
there
in the in
always
the groups,
is. Yeah.
right? And that can allow for even for a player like Gauthier and others stat padding,
Some
like,
inflated stat lines,
right?
for
You
sure.
really bolster the numbers, so it's more about how you play. And certainly there were like look, Gauthier was playing on the top line, centering the top line, no less. So Gauthier centering the top line for Team USA and having to play down the stretch in games against, gold medal game with Sweden, Finland. They played a tough game against Czechia.
Yep.
Earlier in the tournament during the group play. And because of that, when you're playing tougher teams, they're gonna put their best out against your best. So he's getting probably the toughest matchups, and it's going to require more of defending and more doing. So if anything else, he looked decent on faceoffs, and he had more success in terms of the positioning of a centerman than anything else. The goal scoring was not there. He set up a lot of, yes. Did he also lead in assists in this thing? Sure. 10 assists was pretty astronomical there as well.
Pretty good. Yeah.
But
in I think 6 games.
7, I believe is what it was.
Okay.
So because it's 5 in the it's 5 over group, no 4 over group play.
It's got to be 4 over group.
But then it's 3 because it's quarters, semis, medal. So
yeah.
So it's 7. And he he played okay from the offensive standpoint, because certainly there were games where it was easier to score than others. But and like when it came down to it, he didn't even have the best gold medal game. Didn't have any points when it was all said and done. Because 1 point would have given him the tournament. He went into that day with the tournament lead, and there was a player on Czechia who ended up tying at that point, and then he finished with no points in the gold medal game. So
right.
But it does it, he had a leadership position on this team. He was an alternate. That's a big deal.
I don't know if you saw the bar down video in the
tunnel
where
he walked through the tunnel and
afterward.
said, "Get this on bar down." I cleaned that up.
Yeah, you sure did. I was gonna say there were many more words in there. The vibe, and I know it's the case for pretty much any gold medal team, but the vibe seemed really, really high on this team.
So
USA.
I told you before we started recording that I was gonna say something that was less about the Flyers, more about the tournament side of things or whatever, because I know there's a lot of anticipation for Gauthier. Like the idea, and we've talked about this before, with the idea is that obviously he's at BC right now. And oh, by the way, I want to mention also, because we talked about he only tied for the team for the tournament lead in points, at World Juniors. That's a big deal, right? He is also tied for third among all NCAA Division I college hockey players in goals.
Yep.
That's pretty massive in and of itself. Right? So he's having a great year. And there's going to be
13 goals in 17 games. And
there's going to and I'm sure when you play at World Juniors and then get to come back, there's going to be a boost because of now you're playing college. Well, confidence, you're playing college level again, and it's not
and you didn't just play at World Juniors. You won gold at World Juniors.
Sure. So, but there's been a lot of talk about when this could happen, because obviously he's not going to sign until BC's season's over.
Right. And they are expected to make a run, frankly.
That's why I was going to say something. This is how certain I am of saying this. The only way Cutter Gauthier plays for the Flyers this year is if they make the playoffs.
When they make the playoffs.
I wish I had your optimism for that, but I'm so a little skeptical. But do you understand where my like definitive statement comes from? If that team does not win the Frozen Four this year, when half of Team USA was on that roster, or it was the BC roster, right? It was only during the gold medal game, it was only, here's Gabe Perreault, here's Ryan Leonard, here's Will Smith. They have, for God's sake, and it wasn't even the goalie who was in net for the semifinals or the gold medal game, but Fowler was great in goal during parts of the tournament. And then they had on the defensive side, they had players, and then Gauthier's like the headliner of that group. So they had 4 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a goalie that were all on that USA roster, and they're all coming back to the best college team in the nation right now.
It's going to be wild.
And that's not to say there weren't other really good college players from other programs that were on that roster. Some drafted, some not, by the way. doesn't matter. It's going to be,
Team USA is putting a wagon together.
That team was
crazy.
loaded. That team was loaded, and Boston College is loaded. And I don't see any way that if the Flyers are not in the playoffs, that he is playing for them this year, because I think they win the whole thing.
That's fair, but I'm just saying there's a defenseman in Colorado who made his debut under very similar circumstances.
Oh, I'm not saying that. Like, I think they would be crazy if they didn't try to add him, knowing they were in the playoffs.
Well, speaking of making deep runs and wagons,
yes.
How about the CHL? How about specifically the OHL?
Oh, sure.
Are the London Knights a good team?
I'm sure they are, because they've got two really great Flyers prospects on their roster.
They do. Would that be Denver Barkey and Oliver Bonk?
I think it would.
All right.
I gotta bring up Oliver Bonk first, because I had said this on the air earlier in the week, because Bonk and Team Canada got knocked out of World Juniors in like the most unfortunate circumstances possible. You're deadlocked in a tight game. They were playing Czechia, I believe, right? That's who they lost to. Yeah. So they're playing Czechia. It's a tie game. It's looking like overtime, right? And then 10 seconds left, 11 seconds left. Here comes a relatively innocent looking shot. You can see Bonk trying to call out something too. He's pointing a little bit before it happens. And then the thing hits off his stick and deflects past his own goalie. And he looked like he was ready to bury himself under the ice surface.
Of course. And essentially, as a Canadian, after you blow World Juniors like that, man, I remember a couple of years ago, they lost, and one player, I can't remember who it was, screwed up in the shootout or something like that. And the hate he received on social media was horrendous. And I imagine that Oliver Bonk's social media has been pretty atrocious for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And like, that's, you never want to see it, but
no. And hey, by the way, don't be a weirdo and message children online and tell them that they screwed up. Like, relax. The guy's like 19 years old. Like, take a deep breath. Okay. Just go touch some grass. Anyway.
Well, either way, my response to the whole thing was, we'll see. We're going to it's going to test his mental fortitude, because
absolutely
it's a huge tournament in Canada. Anything international is huge for Canada when it comes to hockey. And when you kind of become the GOAT in that situation, and not the greatest of all time kind of goat,
right. The bad goat.
The literal GOAT, it can, especially when you're, like you just said, you're talking 18, 19-year-old kids. It can destroy you a little bit. And his response, and I suspect he's a mentally tough kid.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you consider you kind of have before you're even really a prospect for anybody, you kind of have as a kid, like a true child at that point, on the fly training of what an NHL room is like and all that stuff when your father is a player. Like,
right.
I'm sure being around his father, like, you go through some things and you go through adversity and it happens and you got to bounce back from it. I'm sure he's a mentally tough kid.
So he only scored. So weird that it's Radek Bonk's kid. It's still so weird.
You mean, yeah, what, because you mean this playoff series we were watching in 02 and 03 and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yep.
So what did he do in the next game? He scored a goal.
Yep. I think he bounced. Fantastic response.
Yeah, I think he's bounced back. So that's the Oliver Bonk side of things. I do.
And just a little update. He's got 33 points in 30
I was going to say, I wanted to pull up his
level.
numbers in general. But by the way, the third, I'm trying to make sure this is correct. I'm going to make sure I sort this out properly. So that's 7th among defensemen.
Pretty good.
In the OHL this year.
He's on pace for 14 goals and 66 points, 60 games.
It's very impressive.
As a defenseman? In your draft plus one season, that is an excellent season.
By the way, and this might be, and this is it's an interesting thing about Bonk's game, because so he's got 7 goals this year so far, right? They're all on the power play.
Turns out London's good.
Well, have you noticed though? Because I don't know if you see the clips. Like, I've seen some of the clips.
I've seen some of them. Yeah.
Do you see where they're running him from on the power play? They're running him from the bumper.
Yep.
And that's an interesting place to put a defenseman, number one. But also, it's worked with regularity. He's kind of become a power play scoring specialist for them. He's also, by the way, it's not like he just scores goals on the power play. He's also got 12 assists on the power play.
Pretty good.
So that power play must be silly. Well,
My
considering
goodness.
I'm saying, considering the fact that the Flyers power play is ranked last, if you're watching a kid who's doing something decent on a power play, who maybe down the road could quarterback it, just food for thought.
It seems okay. Yeah, it
Because
seems pretty good.
because here's the thing. What do we always talk about with Bonk? He's probably not a number one. He was taken later first round. He's probably not a number one defenseman, but is there top pairing potential, or is there bigger minutes potential
Right. Is he a really good top four
because of his
guy?
special teams thing? Because that'll matter. If he's able to produce on a power play, you throw him on a power play. He gets more minutes that way.
Yep.
Right. So that's just the defenseman part of it.
Yep.
Do we want to go to the forward?
Yes, sir. Because
I think
Denver Barkey has been silly. Okay. Silly. It is his draft plus one season. This man was snubbed for Team Canada and decided to just take it out on the OHL.
Yes, he did.
Through 36 games, he has 36 assists, not points. That's assists. He also has 20 goals. He is on pace for 37 goals and 103 points.
That's insane.
In 66 games. Now, obviously, that doesn't transfer, 1-to-1 to the NHL, but that's a guy who is going to play and be a producer at the AHL level right away.
But
away.
Right. Well, can I remind everybody that, especially because I was from the very first couple days of camp, he went through training camp this year with the Flyers a little bit before going back to London, obviously, and all that stuff like that. Ian LePerriere constantly said his joke was always Denver Barkey looks like he's 12 years old. and he does kind of like he's got a very young face.
And Elite Prospects has him listed at 5'9", 154 pounds.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to pull up just to get whatever measurements they want to give to somebody like this. But I want to see, because I made this comparison the other day, and I want to see how true it really is. So I'll pull up Elite Prospects 2 to see what they have written down, and I want to see how close this is. Okay. So what did you say Barkey's listed at?
On Elite Prospects, they have him at 5'9", 154 pounds.
All right, so he can gain a little bit of weight. I'm going to mention somebody else. Same height, 174 pounds. Who am I talking about? That would make him, like, as a comparison for Flyers' sake.
Cam Atkinson.
No.
Travis Konecny.
No. Not current.
Okay, go for it. Hit me.
How about Danny Briere?
Okay. Fair enough.
How about a Danny Briere type player? They're the same height, according to Elite Prospects. They were the same height. You got to assume that the key for Barkey over the next several years is get stronger, because at 154, you're going to get pushed around in the NHL.
A little bit. Yep.
So get stronger. But just listen to some of these different numbers that we can go through. Because, by the way, I got the one number that we were really looking for all along when we started this conversation before we hit before we recorded, right? Because I know there was one number you wanted to know about because I brought it up. So we already said. So, by the way, 20 goals in the league this year, which is kind of, there's a few guys who are in front of him, but not by much. Like, he could easily be in the top 10 with another goal or two. The 36 assists is third in the OHL. The 56 points is tied for fifth. This is among all players in the OHL.
Right.
And he's up at that number. But
pretty good.
But he does lead the OHL in another category.
Okay.
And he's kind of playing a game right now with, and I'm crossing leagues to do this, but he's playing a game with Travis Konecny right now where it's anything you can do, I can do better, because Konecny keeps scoring shorthanded goals left and right. And it seems like every time in the last handful of days that Konecny scored shorthanded, I find a clip later that Barkey scored shorthanded. Denver Barkey has 6 shorthanded goals this season.
Is that going to contribute to the Flyers' current penalty kill?
I think it's going to provide
a player who's
capable.
Yep.
I mean, by the way, it's not only that it's like, because there's guys ranked right below him. He's got 6 goals. There's a couple players in the OHL with 4. Then there's a handful with 3, right? Like, okay, there's guys who can score shorthanded. That shouldn't be a surprise, right?
Sure.
He's also got 2 assists shorthanded, so I think he's got the most points.
That's like wild.
Like, the only other 2 guys who have more than 3 shorthanded goals in the OHL this year, there's 2 with 4. They have no assists with it. They're just scoring the goals.
So at this point, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the PWHL.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In case you haven't been paying attention, the Professional Women's Hockey League began play on New Year's Day.
New Year's Day. Yep.
They have been playing for about a week now. the games are great. The broadcasts are great. They are all on YouTube for free, live as they happen and on demand. It is
a handful of those streams picked up something like 17 to 20,000 views in immediacy, by the way, not like coming back on it. It's really good.
That is awesome. And the numbers have been really good for live attendance. One of the things that they have done, which is being looked at, is a little bit of a test case for maybe the NHL to take.
Oh, now I know where you're going with this. I didn't know why you were what you were trying to bring up with
the
this.
PWHL has a rule.
This is I think this is a great rule, by the way.
They've experimented with a couple of different rules, but one of the ones that they stuck with is essentially the power kill. If you score shorthanded, like the Flyers have done 1,000 times this year, like Denver Barkey has done 6 times this year, the power play ends. You have successfully killed the penalty. I love it.
Can you imagine if
I love it.
Can you imagine if it would have been the case with the goal in Vancouver that we talked about?
Insane.
It's right off the face-off to start it. So Poehling goes down 10 seconds later, it's over, and we just wipe out the rest of that power play at that point. That's an interesting rule.
I wanted to come to the NHL so bad, and obviously I'm watching as much PWHL as I can, and it's been great. But I can't wait to watch a shorthanded goal swing a playoff series.
I'm trying to remember.
It will.
Oh, that's
the drama is going to be so good. So
yeah, I mean, there was a lot of hype around the start of that league, obviously, and things like that. So, what I'm hoping for with the growth of it is like right now, there's a lot of things that are being done to the most basic level, kind of like the uniforms.
Well, sure, and
I understand that to a degree, but it's like
part of the reason. Part of the reason is that the league owns all 6 teams.
Sure.
And the idea is that they're going to build them up. And I think what they're doing is they're keeping it pretty generic kind of on purpose. So then they can sell it and allow people to create cultures within the city.
Sure, but you can imagine like most of it was pretty cool in terms of like color schemes were unique and some of them matched up, and some of them matched up as appropriately to like the NHL correspondence, like
the cities,
like well, like Toronto's blue, that makes sense, like I get it, but but like eventually you want to see more than just like the diagonal city name on the front, and because I don't even think the teams have names, right? It's just the cities.
They do have names, they're just not great names. I think they typically refer to the cities.
Well, because I was gonna say I've never seen it listed as, oh, do you know who's playing today? The blanks versus the blanks. It's usually just, hey, Toronto and New York are playing in PWHL action, or it's Boston, Minnesota, or something like that.
Oh no, you're right. I'm sorry. They are not named. They are just PWHL city name.
Okay, but and hopefully that changes too, because I think it would be cool for even again for branding identities and all that stuff like that, and it would just lead to more. More for all, and obviously, like when you look at some of the players, like obviously there's to ice 6 teams in this league, you're going to have other players that people don't recognize from, like from the Olympic ranks and things like that. But there are a lot of players who people should recognize from past Olympics and things like that. For U.S. players, Canadian players, these female players who are incredibly talented because they, we've heard their names before. We've heard their names and we've seen them do things, whether around NHL players or not, for that matter, because some of them do, some of them haven't. It is like I know that just from the U.S. side of things, like Hillary Knight's on I think Hillary Knight's on Boston's team, and Kendall Coyne Schofield is on Minnesota, I think, is the captain of Minnesota, actually. I believe
so, yeah.
So it's like, so you put recognizable names there. And Montreal, I think Montreal has a team, and of course, who's captaining the Montreal team but Marie-Philippe Poulin? Yeah, because like, come on, like who else would it be? It can't be anybody else to be the first captain of that team. Like you better do that with in that situation. So I curious to see how it goes. It's one of these things that for me, because like I know you're consuming it a lot more than I have. It's hard. Like it's hard.
I'm trying to. Yeah.
I'm not like, it's not a hard watch in terms of wanting to watch. It's a hard watch in terms of crossing times with with working other things too. Like I say that about the what's it called? I say that about the minors all the time too. Like it's hard to watch the minor league team when hey, I should watch the Flyers minor league team, but I can't because
one thing
sometimes at the same time.
One thing I will say, not just for you, but kind of for everybody in general, is that games are on the YouTube channel for free. They stay up. The VOD stays up. I personally, even if I'm not actively sitting down and laser focused watching every game. I am putting it on as background. I am trying to consume as much of it as I can
Sure.
to support it, because I really do think it is excellent for the world of hockey in general. But yeah,
like I can tell you one supporter that they've got for sure, because I saw it on social this week. Eric Lindros is a fan because his daughter plays. His daughter plays. So, and his daughter's walking. He's got pictures. He took a picture of his daughter wearing a big logo across the sweatshirt, PWHL, and it's like, here's and he even said, here's the next one. So,
well, right, and a little bit of another cross sport reference, because I feel like we've done a couple of those. If this league ends up giving us a star like a Caitlin Clark, right?
I
hear you. Following any women's basketball at the moment?
No.
Clark man, I don't even care. I want to be Caitlin Clark when I grow up. I don't even care. I don't even care. If this league results in a single star like that, then it's great for the world of hockey, and it's just going to be excellent. I'm hoping that we get to a world where we can get some financial support from the NHL, because I think that will be huge, similar to the way that the NBA helps support the WNBA.
I think you also want to hope that it gets to a point where expansion becomes a possibility as well. And
there's already interest in
I know there's already interest, because let's put it this way, you really cornered the main areas where hockey's present. Like it's Toronto, Montreal, it's New York and Boston. It's
within 5 to
Minnesota.
Within 5 to 10 years, I could see them doing a second six.
You would hope. And not only beyond that, but it's like, I've already seen people like make the suggestion that why not have one in Philly? I think that's
if there's a second six, I would absolutely expect Philadelphia to be one of the hefty markets in favor of it. Yeah,
sure. And you hope that would be the case, that it could get to something like that, where it expands to different places like that, and goes beyond. Like they really right now have cornered that northeast portion of the country and into Canada and things like that. And that makes sense. I get it. But you're going to get to a point where it's like, okay, bring it to some of these other cities and really expand this thing. Like, I don't know that it'll ever be as big as the NHL is, 32 cities.
Of course.
But if you can get it to 16, do half of that.
And
especially with the support of sharing like arena spaces and things like that.
Absolutely.
Like somewhere down the line, I think a couple of the major, like I think in Minnesota, they're using one of the major arenas to do some of those games.
They're typically tarping off the upper rung, but yes, they are using. I think
using a major arena using a major arena is a step in the right direction, even if it's not going to hold as many fans.
They have already set the world record for women's or hockey at a professional women's game. It was just over 13,000.
That's pretty good. That's
incredible.
Great. Especially for a league that's just starting, sure.
Well, and demand was so high that they had to open additional sections for ticketing. Yeah,
that's
absolutely
great.
Love to see it. Okay, circling all the way back to the Flyers here. I don't really have a transition for this, but
no, that was I appreciate you getting that mention.
Absolutely. One more prospect to talk about real quick. I know we briefly touched Matvei Michkov.
Of course.
He's the big one. He's the one we're all waiting for.
Sure.
As it sits right now, he has 29 points in 34 games. Again, we've talked about the fact that the KHL is a men's league, very difficult to score. The fact that he is as close to point per game as he is remarkable. He's on pace for 20 goals on the season.
I got to add one more thing for you there, though.
Yeah.
He's got the points that he's got, and he's playing on one of the worst KHL teams.
Yes.
Which means that, like, I've seen countless times from people who are really following those games closely. If his teammates could finish, he'd have like this many more assists.
Okay.
Like he's doing things that people only wish that like were going. Like if like honestly, you know what it really translates back to be honest, he's playing in Sochi, right? Like, or he's playing for Sochi, right? All right. The idea is that he got loaned there from Cheska, the hockey,
St. Petersburg. Yeah.
Yes, and it's like, maybe they'll realize he was actually their best player too and actually utilize him.
Man, if they bring him back and he starts playing for St. Petersburg, well, and we all know about the benchings and the pressure of the Russian and leaving, and we're not going to go into all the Russian politics.
No.
But if he can get to St. Petersburg and get ice time, he's going to be a very, very productive player.
And the bottom line is, like we've said before, it's patience with him. You got to wait for this. You're not going to need much patience for his abilities. Like, he is a talented player, and you can see it on a regular basis.
Yep.
It's just, it's going to be patience
It's a patience thing. Yep.
Well, because it's the opposite end of the spectrum. We started this thing talking about Cutter Gauthier, and it's like, hey, that could
he might be here this season. Yep.
Right. It could be. And then and I have doubts that it's going to be this year because of how, again, I can't say with certainty the Flyers are making the playoffs. And I definitely feel like his college team is going to be in the Frozen Four, at the very least in it, if not win the thing.
Right.
Like, that's how good that Boston College team is.
Sure.
And it was a big time celebration. If you were watching those World Junior games, big time celebration of, hey, here's all these Boston College kids. Oh, wait, guess what? That's a BU connection there. And then, oh, by the way, look, University of Denver's got these guys here. And so the top group is the top group. Michigan had players there. Like, you got some talented players across the board. It was just so much talent on that team that they were favored to win, and they did because they were that good. And it was as simple as that. I mean, even the goal, the bronze medal game was on first, and I watched that and I go, look at all that goal scoring. I hope you can't wait for the 3-2 game that's coming when they play Sweden, because that's going to be tight. And then it turned into, and it was that for a little while. And then it turned into, hey, look, 6-2.
And then it got nasty.
By the way, did you see the social media clip the Flyers put out after the Calgary game? Because Cam York clearly watched the national or the gold medal game.
I did. I saw the little.
Cam York was blowing kisses across the Calgary bench, and that was the same move that who was that when it pulled off? Ryan Leonard did that, right?
Well, something I know I mentioned earlier. You can expect Travis Konecny to be doing it Monday night against the Pittsburgh Penguins too. Like this team is vibing. This team is feeling themselves.
That was, to be honest, by the way, that was, first of all, Cam York is super quiet. So he's not the kind of guy to push the envelope usually. Or
I
do
love that
like
from
that.
him.
So that's already a telling sign as it is.
Oh.
And oh, by the way, because I thought I didn't really think about this until just now. York kind of took an elbow to the head or close to and put himself in a bad position. So I understand why the penalty was what it was, but obviously wasn't happy about it. And he threw his helmet down the hallway as he went off, by the way. He was pissed. And so you come back and you're doing that. All right. So the intensity has heated up, and of course they don't play each other for the rest of the year. The Flyers in Calgary. That's always the way it works. Right.
Yeah.
But maybe, things are heating up, and that's always a good thing as we get to the moving forward part of it.
Yeah. And the good news is we've talked a lot about kind of the Flyers schedule and playing against good teams and playing against bad teams. And this week you do get a chance, right? You get to prove yourself. You get a Pittsburgh game on Monday, big division game. You would really like 2 points. You would really, really like to get 2 in regulation. And then after that, you got 2 theoretically softer games. You got Montreal, who's towards the bottom of the league standings, and you got Minnesota, who's kind of vaguely clinging on to playoff hopes, but it's starting to slip away from them a little bit.
Sure. So the interesting thing too, because this was, and we didn't do a show in between the two, during the break or whatever, or right up against the break, but they were about to play teams once they got through Vancouver. They were going to play a bunch of teams that were below 20th. It was Seattle, Calgary, Edmonton. They played those teams like that. Columbus was in that group. Then they played Calgary again. And now you're doing the same thing because you're lining it up. And Pittsburgh's a little bit ahead of that group, obviously.
Sure.
But then Montreal's on it. Minnesota, they had a 2-week stretch where they were going to play basically a bunch of teams below them and in the bottom 10, no less. And that's kind of changed a little bit because Seattle got hot a little bit and Edmonton's gotten hot and they're back in the playoff conversation.
Yep.
But Calgary is still right where they were when that started, and they split with them. Fair.
Yep.
The Columbus game, I already argued about why I thought they lost the game and that, and all that stuff like that. And Montreal is going to be a game that's within that grouping now, and Minnesota's down there, like you said. The Minnesota one interests me because I'm jumping a little bit further ahead than even this week, but there's been 2 pieces of news that kind of become relevant because they happen around the same time. And you're going to play one of those games this week and one of those games next week, which is Minnesota put out, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, Kirill Kaprizov and Philip Gustafsson week to week.
Yep.
Whoa, that's significant. Now they're not playing against the Flyers. It means they're not playing.
Is Ryan Hartman? No, he didn't get suspended for that, right?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
But
he should have.
Wait. No. Wait. Maybe he did. I'm sure
I get 6.
I have to go back to remember. I'm trying to remember what I would.
So if you missed it, Ryan Hartman, Flyers legend, got himself involved. He got no, never mind.
I know what you're talking about, because this is the thing with the hot mic, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think he got anything for it. So he, on a face-off, absolutely mauled. Who was it? Was it? Forget who it was. It was
Cole Perfetti.
Cole Perfetti, right? Absolutely mauls Cole Perfetti with a stick straight to the mush on a face-off. Later in the game, or right before that, at some point in time, at some point in the sequence, he was caught on a hot mic, essentially saying, "Well, sorry, I'm gonna have to do this to you. I'm gonna, sorry for what's coming. My bad." And,
bad.
It's the code type of thing. And there had been an incident. A Minnesota Wild player had gotten hurt. Ryan Hartman decided that he needed to take revenge into his own hands. Anyway, he ended up not getting suspended for it. He got fined for it, is what happened.
Yes, that was. And the reason I'm confused is because it's about the same day, if not like a couple days later, Jason Zucker got 3 games.
Yeah.
And that's why I got confused for a second, because I'm like, you know what? You're right. I saw a multi-game suspension come across the line.
You're right. It wasn't
wasn't him.
though.
Yes. Okay. So we're all good there.
So he will play against the Flyers, theoretically. But
nonetheless, you're taking their best player out of the picture with that injury.
Absolutely.
And their number one goalie. Now, don't get me wrong. The number one goalie being out just means you're probably getting Marc-Andre Fleury, and that's no slouch, obviously.
Oh, no. Right.
But Kaprizov's a big deal, especially for special teams, especially for his abilities and things like that. So that's a big deal in and of itself. And then basically 2 days after that, I see that Dallas puts out Miro Heiskanen's week to week, and the Flyers have them on the schedule. By the way, I should also mention, like with both of those situations, with Minnesota and Dallas, for the last time this year. So the last time you play those teams, when your schedule could be into the grind of it, you're missing they're missing top players, and right now you're not really missing top players. By the way, by the time that Minnesota game rolls around, they might have Cates back.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, Cates, and then let's not forget that Cates played college in that state.
See, but I would also like to almost see Noah Cates get a little rehab stint. Let him play a couple games with the Phantoms and just kind of get back up to speed.
That doesn't happen as frequently as it used to, though. So I think now it's kind of, you just go back in, you practice a lot. And you know what? In fairness, maybe it doesn't happen a lot with this team because
they don't have practices.
Well, they don't. But Tortorella's big thing is you practice how you play. So if he's out skating, you're skating with some form of intensity, and maybe just a couple of days of taking some contact, and you're good.
And then
who knows?
Your fourth game this week. Well, and there's also travel involved, so that might affect him as well. But the fourth game this week is against that aforementioned best team in the league at this current moment, the Winnipeg Jets. That's a tough game, on the road. It's your third game in 4 nights, while also being your second of another set of 3 and 4. They play a lot of games. They're playing 4 and 6. That is the third of the 4. There's a lot of games. It's a lot of hockey. It's a tough one. You got to go in and beat. Hang with Winnipeg in Winnipeg Saturday night.
The thing is, we narrow this down because we're talking about the week ahead, and then we'll do another show, and I get that.
Yeah.
We narrow it down to like this chunk of 4 because that's what's on the schedule for the week. But it's like this to me, this month in general is the month we find out who they are.
Absolutely, and we said that every month.
We have,
but they keep staying in it, so we have to keep saying it.
Well, here's the reason. Okay, also here's the reason, because right now, as it stands, they're technically, with everything the way that it played out, they're back up to 3rd in the division. So they're in that 3rd spot. They're technically by points total tied with the Islanders, and New Jersey's 2 points behind, Washington's 2 points behind, Tampa's 3 points behind. So you've got roughly between, it's a 2 to 3 point gap. Right now it's 2. Right now it's technically 2 because one of those 2 teams could easily get there, but you get my point.
You're right.
They're going to be in a playoff spot through the game against Pittsburgh's huge because it's divisional.
Enormous. Yeah.
Like the difference between, let's what you win in regulation, you jump to 5 or 6 points above Pittsburgh. Win in overtime, it's 5.
And like you said, it's your last divisional game this month.
It's their last divisional game. If I'm going to check, but I'm pretty sure this is the truth.
Next one is the Stadium Series. Yep, New Jersey on February 17th. How far off you play.
And even then, go look at the February schedule. They play the Devils in that Stadium Series game. They have a weekend with the Rangers and Penguins, and that's it.
Yep.
So in total, until you get to March. We're going to be pushing the trade deadline when you get to the bulk of we play the division again.
Well, and the good news is the division is where all the good teams are. So the fact that you don't have to play them for 2 months.
Well,
is
it is, but at the same time, like at some point in time, you would think somebody's going to hit a nut. Like somebody else is going to hit a slide. Like if the Flyers hit their slide right now.
Yep.
Okay. You had that stretch. It's 2 wins in 8 games. They had lost 5 of 6. That's rough. Okay, so maybe they've hit their slide and they're going to come out of it on the other side, and you beat, go out and try to win against Pittsburgh, Montreal, maybe Minnesota as well, because but let's not forget they beat Minnesota earlier in the year as well, so that matters. Maybe Winnipeg's a scheduled loss, and you take that for what it is. Yeah. But turn this into a 2, 3, 4 game winning streak of sorts during the course of the week, and you're back into a position where you have a little bit of comfort. You can take the loss to Winnipeg and not feel like it's detrimental. They're in a situation right now where when they came home from that road trip, you play Columbus, kind of felt like a game. If you want to keep the playoff narrative alive, you probably want to win this game. And then they lost it in the shootout. So they're playing Calgary. You kind of want to win this game because
that was almost a must-win.
Right.
That was a must-win.
And I even brought this up on certain things I didn't, because I even said I hate using that term, especially in January. But it's like, and I really hate using that term on a team that didn't have any expectations coming in.
Fair.
Like you don't need to go there with that. If it ends somewhere down the line, it ends somewhere down the line. But let's be real about everything we've talked about from the beginning. Because I know you're right. We say every month, we're going to find out who they are now, right? It has been a trend. The key is that we've crossed Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. Now you're going to cross during this week the halfway point of the season. You get to the end of the month, you're 50 games in, and it's the All-Star break. At some point in time, and I believe for me, I even said this on the air during the course of the week, if they cross the 50-game mark and get to the All-Star break at that point in time, at least what I will tell you is, I'm not going to sit there and say, yes, they're a playoff team. But what I will tell you is, at that point, I believe they'll be in the conversation for the entire year. By that point, 50 games, you're going to have 32 left, and you're into the grind of the fine. You're into the stretch run.
So you don't have any vacations booked in April, do you? Thinking that they weren't going to be a playoff team?
We went. You know what? I this is a story I meant to tell my wife earlier, and I never got completely around to it. We do have a vacation planned with my family. It is as safe as it gets, because it is the literal week that the Stanley Cup is probably handed out.
It's safe until it's not, man. It's safe until
I still think it's going to be safe because of whatever. But at the same time, if you're asking me, do I have room?
If they win 2 rounds, how nervous are you?
Oh, incredibly, because then we're getting into territory that I really didn't bank on. But if you're asking me if the remainder, like the last regular season game is April 16th, if you're asking me if I have anything immediately in April or in May, the answer is no.
Okay, keep your schedule clear.
Wouldn't it be something because you're bringing this up, obviously, because let's just say super stranger things have happened. Maybe, I don't know. Wouldn't it be something though, if they not only because the playoffs wouldn't start effective immediately. You're talking April 16th, and then there's going to be a little bit of a pause, and then
playoffs may start on 4/20, which we love here.
I was thinking, well, that could be for some series. I mean, I was thinking the whole thing probably starts the Friday. They give you 2 days, and then
probably,
we're in.
yeah.
But wouldn't it be something if on or around when the season ends, it was like early May, and you're pushing the 1-year anniversary of the New Era press conference, and it's like how far they would have come in 1 year to do that. That's all I'm saying. Like you're asking me about anything in April or May in terms of vacations. Like, no, but at the same time, like I'm sitting here thinking about the press conference of the New Era thing was on the day of my sister's wedding last year.
Okay.
And it was like, I remember sitting there, we were prepping for that stuff. I had it on just to kind of get tabs on. I was going to go back. And the day after it was I'll go back to work then. Like I can't do anything now, obviously, but I will write a bunch of stuff on it later and go back to it and things like that.
Totally.
And it felt old school. Remember we talked about that? Like it felt like, oh yeah, this used to be like the Snyder, and by the way, the Ed Snyder Day thing, legacy game.
It was great. Yeah.
Which, by the way, you can tell I wasn't there. I kind of, unfortunately, I wish I was, but I had a family party to go to. So I was more than happy to do the family party over that and have good conversation with my family and all stuff like that. You can tell based on everything I saw that day, in addition to obviously the organization as a whole, but that had Dan Hilferty's fingerprints all over it.
Yep.
And that is going to show you the difference between what they were and what they are. And
absolutely. And they are primed to finish 10th in the conference and pick 14th.
Maybe that's the way it goes.
Just like the good old days. Sorry, the cynical part of me jumped out for just half a second. Never mind.
You were so optimistic the whole show.
They're winning the cup. They're winning the cup. They're winning the cup.
You spent the whole show trying to get me to cross over to that side, and then you dropped the cynical nature.
Listen, Philadelphia fan, it's bred in me. I'm still watching Joe Juravicius run down the vet sideline in 04. Oh. Yeah, and your heart just broke hearing the name, didn't it? Exactly. Thank you. You're welcome.
How timely of you to bring up a matchup between two teams that I think are facing off in the playoffs in the NFL next week.
That'll be fun. All right. Also next week, our next show. That's right. No more 3-week breaks. We're back. As far as I know, every week for quite a while here. Kevin and I haven't really broken down anything further than
stretch run time, baby. Let's
go. Absolutely. It is time to go. The Flyers have about 45 games left. We'll be here to cover pretty much all of them and all the playoff games too. All right. And I think that'll do it for today. Follow us on the social medias. Like I said at the top of the show here, we're at YW Podcast pretty much everywhere we can be. Go to the YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit like. It really helps us out. Share it with your friends. All right. I think that's it, man. We'll be back. We got 4 games this week. Pittsburgh tomorrow. All right. We'll see ya.